Oh, hello there. Good to see you. Welcome to Dramatic Readings with Jamey. I am your host, Jamey. Today we shall venture into the world of role-playing, though more commonly referred to as RPing. Specifically, we shall be looking at an application. I hope you will enjoy tonight as much as I will. Let us begin. Full name: Adrian Paolo Messi del Palermo. His parents are Veronica Remy and Rodrigo Adrian Messi. However, his father now goes by his stage name, Paolo Palermo, bestowing that last name upon his child, and adding the prefix just for effect. Adrian comes from his father's name, and Messi, his father's original surname. He is currently 17 years old, and his date of birth is September the 20th, 1960. As far as nicknames go, aside from the occasional term of endearment from a girl, he has few, if any, nicknames. Pretty boy, if it could be called a nickname. He is currently a 7th year, and was sorted into the noble house of Slytherin. As far as blood lineage go, he's a half-blood, but a portion of that magical blood is Vila blood, thanks to his maternal grandmother. Sexuality: Adrian, though would classify himself as metrosexual, doesn't really see himself as such. He is straight as they come, not out of prejudice, but because men are simply brutes to him, the majority of them anyway. Other than himself, the idea that anyone could be attracted to such barbaric creatures was laughable to him. Ha ha ha. His play-by is one Raffaello Balzo. Appearance: Adrian could be called, amongst other things, beautiful, though it seems odd to apply the term to a male. His high cheekbones, luscious locks, and overall demeanor makes Adrian draw the eye of all, men and women alike. His hair is always immaculately kept, flowing past his shoulders, and is something of an odd color. Though natural, his hair is a deep red, more of a maroon, and many mistake it for a black or deep brown, only to be intrigued the further. Over the last year or so, Adrian has begun sporting a finely trimmed mustache, and something of a goatee, if it could be called that. More like a bit of a soul patch. Adrian grew up knowing that he was angelic looking, and has learned to make the most of it. Along with keeping his hair in such perfect, everything about his appearance is deliberate and tasteful. Adrian possesses a single tattoo. Along the length of his left forearm are the words, "El es mieux de toi de beau que bon, mas el ist me de tre bon que villain." Roughly translated, as he has tattooed almost any time anyone sees his arm, it means, it is better to be beautiful than good, but it is better to be good than ugly. Slender and lean, Adrian does much to keep himself as such, watching what he eats, like most girls do. I would like to take this moment to remind everyone that Adrian is a male character. Clothing: Adrian absolutely abhors the school uniform, bland as they are. His normal wardrobe is quite a bit more elegant, flashy, and downright tasteful. Generally form-fitting, his pants especially are non-baggy garments to accent his slender figure. He just prefers a less impractical attire. There is no color under the sun that Adrian looks bad in, but he prefers dark hues, blacks, deep reds, and blues being his favorites. Still, when a formal occasion arises, he prefers to go with an all-white ensemble, being one of the few people who could do so without looking or feeling ridiculous. Still, formal or not, all of his wardrobe is of the finest material, and generally of designer make. His affiliation: from a young age, the wars of the outside world were of great interest to young Adrian. Due to being the charmer he is, confrontation was something he found rarely, if ever. As such, the idea of conflict on such a grand scale only intrigued him. Dark wizardry and dark arts are disgusting to him, after learning what he could as a child. Hearing stories of both Grindelwald and the Nazi Party lying waste to his mother's homeland, the notion was boggling to him, destroying such beauty. Now he sees all dark wizards as like Grindelwald, uncaring for beauty or passion, only power. Adrian lusts for power himself, but to sacrifice these precious treasures seems an aberration to him. As of yet, though, Adrian still hasn't devoted himself utterly to the cause. At Hogwarts and outside, his pursuits are still far more centered on hedonism, but as the war escalates, so does his acceptance of the fact that he will have to choose a side, and when the time comes, Adrian knows what he must do. His familia, a black cat, a kitten really, by the name of Diego. Last year's Christmas present from his father, the kitten was wiry and energetic, and is slowly helping Adrian to learn that other things in the world are worth loving again, not just himself. His wand. Rosewood, 13 inches, phoenix feather. A supple wand, it has been remarked by a few people that it's almost perfectly made for bewitching charms and the like. To this day, Adrian wonders if the wand chose him because he himself was so naturally gifted at charms, or whether his own mastery has come from the wand itself. We'll move on now to the personality section. The characteristics. He is indulgent. Hedonism is a friend to Adrian, always reliable, and rarely stabbing him in the back, despite what the more immoral bits of society would have him believe. Whether it's smoking weed, dropping acid flying around the ground, chain-smoking camels or lucky strikes, or just the more carnal pleasures of the flesh with any number of girls, he'll always give in. In Adrian's way of thinking, it is no use denying himself that he so clearly desires. He always gets what he truly wants, and what he truly wants, at any one moment, is for to live to the fullest, to party, to do all things in excess, for who knew when he'd no longer have this opportunity? Though he is too loath to admit it, Adrian has something of a drinking problem, though he certainly wouldn't call it that. Perhaps it's in his blood to have a love for wine, as he always has, but more recently things have gone sour. By the end of his 6th year, it had gone from the occasional bottle of Chianti and a fine meal with a lovely girl to Adrian drinking 2 bottles a night, sometimes as many as 5 if he was feeling like being with people. Now, with the holidays of his final year coming swiftly, he had already subconsciously decided that this year would be no more kid stuff. Now it was a bottle of dark rum before bed, usually mixed with a little more than pineapple juice and Kahlua. Every morning he wakes up later, and Adrian has promised himself that after the holidays, alcohol must be cut out entirely. Easier said than done. Vain. Adrian Paolo Palermo is, for lack of a better term, a pretty boy. He is one of the most naturally attractive boys in his year, therefore Hogwarts, and he is well aware of the fact. Coupled with his natural blessings is a charm and charisma that are unparalleled by any of his peers. Whether these traits grew from his looks is debatable, but they do indeed seem to go hand in hand. As such, it only seems natural that such a seductive figure would charm even himself. He is narcissistic to a fault. He loves many things, but he always places himself foremost among them. He takes few insults at all, and fewer of those seriously. Only someone of value, prodding at his self-conscious mind, will find that he is not, in fact, a person without faults. Many people take a look at him, face value, and see a perfect person. It's something Adrian is still childishly trying to pretend he can be. Clever. Though few know it, the bit of himself that Adrian loves the dearest is his mind. Clever as a cat, he seemed to embody the very idea of his mother's child. Vain though he may have been, his charm and wit couldn't help but bring popularity, whether he wanted it or not, and his wit was a honed skill, not unlike his charisma. To Adrian, his charm and his acidic tongue were almost one and the same. If his brain didn't match his face, then it was all a waste. Very few people indeed have actually earned the true respect of Adrian, and he counts even fewer folks his equals. However, he is willing to almost anything for those privileged few that he considers true friends. With that in mind, nothing earns Adrian's respect like being able to consider someone an intellectual peer. Charming. In one way or another, his natural charisma has seeped into almost every part of his personality. Though eternally tasteful and aloof in his way, there's an air of approachability to Adrian that has been there since birth. He sees people much as he sees everything else, as a form of art, and as such, he finds some of the oddest ones the most intriguing. So in that sense, some of his likability is manipulation, having studied human emotions for all his years, knowing how to turn people to your cause. out of... what? The lad's bravado is an integral part of his being, more than the subconscious, and it affects everyone around him in one way or another. From his charisma stems his vanity, his confidence, and most of his problems. I'm sorry, there was this massive typo that I believe was meant to say out of character, but then there were extra C's, and then it was in character. Moving on. Disillusioned. To young Adrian, it seems that he had himself trapped. For so long, most of his life, he has perfected the art of charisma, coolness under any and all circumstances. Too perfect now, it turns out, as he can no longer bring himself to share any sadness, pain, or anything else than the suave and collected face he presents to the world. As yet, he is unable to simply disregard his reputation of the last 10 years, and be free of himself, for now it still remains too cherished, too stable. He feels that if he sheds that skin, the one that he'll have to don may not always be to his liking. Few, if any, have noticed the coming change in Adrian. Such is the problem. His charmcraft is so practical that he fears the weakness, the frailty of his persona will be unveiled if he shares too much. Ambitious. Whether his ambition comes from his natural aptitude, or vice versa, Adrian isn't sure. Still, for himself especially, he expects, and generally attains, nothing less than the best. He honestly believes himself to be able to achieve anything he really desires, and over the years, narcissistic confidence has bred success, whether it be on the Quidditch pitch, or the remnants of smitten hearts left in his wake. To young Palermo, it doesn't matter for the endeavor. If he cares for it at all, he'll pour himself into it. If he doesn't, he could care less how he fares. For most cases, he knows he is more than competent, even if it pains him to admit it, and then his pride leaves him no choice. Now that his 7th year has come, the time has arrived for Adrian to seriously consider his options for life in the years to come. The only things he's considered are ministry positions, becoming a Quidditch pro, or perhaps working in Muggle movies. Most people might consider these a bit hopeful, but Adrian's have always been lofty, and very rarely, if ever, whether thanks to himself or his family, he has been let down. Artistic. Adrian has a most interesting view on art, and therefore people, especially one considers his vanity. He is of the philosophy that anything in the world can be qualified as art, as long as the creator sees it as such. Henceforth, his view on people and their actions in the world, if in any and all things, fascinate him. It is on these subjects that most of his more literal art forms focus: poetry, songs, the odd short story, and a semi-autobiographical novel that he's been working on since his 4th year. All these things he does for himself. Rarely, almost never at all, does Adrian share his work with anyone. It is far too revealing. It shows that he is more than the Hogwarts celebrity people would see him as. Even his songs, simple acoustic ballads, remained unsung, though many boys would turn them on the hearts of fickle girls waiting for a song of their own. He writes almost as therapy, a small outlet like a friend in which he can confide, one he knows will never betray him. His strengths include Quidditch, bewitching charms, and his charisma. His weaknesses are narcissism, potions, struggling with shedding his fake skin, and appearing pretentious. He likes mirrors, Lucky Strikes, Robert Fripp, Federico Fellini films, Quidditch, Late Summer in Paris, Doobies on the Shores of the Lake, London's West End, Tottenham Hotspurs, PSG, the Girls of Cannes in Buenos Aires, formal events, looking the best in the room, tango, Boca Juniors, Frank Zappa, Muggle football, his heritage, and the Cold War as a study on humanity. His dislikes include top sheets, sugar, Professor Binns, waking up any time before noon, girls who are little more than a face, Diego bringing him mice carcasses, rain, being the first of his family at Hogwarts, the school uniforms, uptight and inhibited people, the pretentious pureblood students, Northern England and Scotland, feeling embarrassed for others' poor taste, studying anything except for charms, the troubles occurring so close to home, the fact that he is too good to be true, and having to try and be what people perceive him as. His hopes, Although he had always suspected a job for himself in either something using his charms expertise, PR-related or artistic, it seems his options are wider than he'd imagined. The boy in Adrian still arbors dreams of becoming a professional Quidditch player. Now that he has reached the next level as a chaser, that dream is looking very much like a genuine possibility. As such, he's got an eye on the captaincy, and has been studying the tactical elements of the game far more, learning to think like a coach on the pitch. Somewhere between a hope and a goal is a desire to shed his skin, not have to be perfect all the time. After almost 20 years, Adrian is growing sick of having to try and lead an impossibly perfect life. Fears. The most physically manifested of Adrian's fears are bludgers. As a chaser, they are a genuine threat to him on a constant basis, and a bludger to the face can do irreparable damage. To that extent, his boggart is himself in 20 years, fat and balding. On a more internal level, the thought of Voldemort and the darkness of the world are beginning to press on his mind. Hearing his mother speak of France during the war was terrifying when he considered that the very same could happen in the UK, and soon. Let's move on to his history. His background. Adrien Paulo Palermo was born to be something beautiful. His mother, a French witch from Cannes, was the creator and owner of Slick Easy's magical hair care products. And though his father was a muggle, he was famous in his own right. A strikingly handsome man from Buenos Aires, Rodrigo Adrian Messi became a tango dancer in the birthplace of the style, only to become a movie actor at the suggestion of his manager, and adoring female fans. He debated going to Los Angeles, the up-and-coming movie capital of the world, but his inability to speak English all that well turned him to Europe. Speaking a bit of French, Paris seemed a more logical option, and with the late 50s bringing a lust for art films and dance movies, almost immediately Rodrigo was picked up by a studio exec with an eye for screen presence. Changing his stage name to Paulo Palermo after the ancestry home of his family, his stardom was fast approaching. One warm summer night, while attending the film festival in lovely Cannes, on the Riviera, Adrian's father met the love of his life. Leaving the festival together, walking late into the night on the beach with her, he knew that this was she. The girl, a local by the name of Veronique, knew nothing of his celebrity or movies, but she was entranced anyway. Granted, he didn't know that the girl was a witch, but even after they married and had a child on the way, he took the news without so much as a second guess. He believed her immediately. She had always been strange, but now he knew why. Soon before young Adrian was born, his mother's business really took off, and both of his parents were happier than they'd ever been. The budding family moved itself to the Isle of Man, on the UK's more picturesque homes, reveling in the chance for a fresh start and new opportunities for all three of them. His father was getting parts in English movies now as well, and though they debated much, his parents decided that the boy would be left to choose for himself where he would study. Almost as soon as Adrian could speak, it was clear that his father was his ultimate idol, forever. His mother's magic was something else entirely. Glad that she was a magic had a deep passion, Veronique was a bit saddened by the fact that the lad wouldn't be attending her beloved Beauxbat's academy. As the years wore and Adrian grew into a young man, Rodrigo and Veronique couldn't have been more proud of their boy. He was everything a parent could ask for, handsome, now, but with that look of someone who will grow to look even better, sharp as a tack, the most charming little boy anyone can meet. That, at least, was his father's doing. Always a hit with every woman he met, Rodrigo imparted everything he knew to the lad, and it seemed even some things he hadn't. He'd worked on his swagger, perfected it, but it seemed that his son already possessed his own. Lovely Veronique couldn't help but smile to herself over the years, watching her child become a charmer to rival her husband. Being part Vila had only little to do with it. Still, though, his mother informed him about what his heritage meant, aside from the obvious appearance. He'd be tempestuous at times, and ever aloof. It was something she literally dealt with twice as much as he ever could, having diluted the blood for her son. Still, his parents' work kept them very busy, and from an early age it was deemed best that Adrian spent time in his ancestral homes. Summers were spent in Cannes, soaking up the sun rays and the attention of French beauties. Winters in Buenos Aires with his father's family. The rest of the time was spent at home, in his parents' other new home in London's Nouveau Riche West End, studying his parents and their success. By the time Adrian had reached age 11 and was ready for school, Harry spoke English, French, and Spanish all equally. Adrian had thought Italian as well. His Sicilian grandfather had taught him while he was in Buenos Aires, but not exactly, as he found out. While trying up a beautiful Italian girl, he tried to switch to Italian simply for effect, but the girl merely looked nonplussed for a second, then laughed. Then she informed him that what he spoke was not quite Italian, but Siciliano, the dialect of the Mediterranean's largest island, and quite a leap from good old Milanese Italian. Since that day, one of Adrian's dreams has been to visit the land of his father's ancestors, to use the language, if nothing else. Hogwarts is where Adrian truly found himself. There he learned to thrive in his charisma, not just occasionally use it as a tool. By the end of his second year, he had already dated 2 fourth years and a 5th year. His father would have been proud. As the boy grew into a young man, Adrian only got better at convincing himself he was the very best, whether or not it's true. By his 5th year, he could have had just about any girl in school wrapped around his finger, even though he rarely exercised the power. Conquest for conquest's sake was simply growing old. Nowadays, it's rare indeed that he really throws himself into pursuit of a girl, but it makes the ones that he does special indeed. To Adrian, classes were never quite as riveting as the rest of his life at Hogwarts. Potions sounded boring to him. Vain as he was, there were very few potions he'd ever even take, much less desire. But charms, that class had entranced him right from the start. Ironically or not, he was gifted in this subject like no other. He was easily one of the best in his class, to the frustration of the nerds, and it was the only subject that he really gave all of his attention. He didn't really care about classes. All the others he allowed himself to get by on minimal effort and his razor-sharp intellect. Still, when Alice had come along, Adrian had pleasantly surprised even himself. With the obviously outstanding in charms and dreadful in potions, he expected no less, but every other class he received exceeds expectations. Not bad at all, for 5 years of not studying outside class a single time. Perhaps the most subtle of Adrian's passions is Quidditch. The sport has had a hold on him ever since he was a boy, seeing his mum ride on a broom. He had proved exceptional at being chaser once he was old enough to ride. Still, until his 4th year, the fear of taking a bludger to the face kept him from the pitch. But then he'd given in, and for a girl no less. The idea still made him smile. It was on the Quidditch pitch that he made his latest breakthrough, but his soccer pitch that inspired it. Last summer while in Argentina for a few weeks, Adrian had been playing football with some local boys, as it was all the rage in South America. During a game one day, he was struck with the simple realization that if someone could curl a soccer ball in the air, why couldn't one do the same with a quaffle? Immediately going to get his broom and a quaffle, it was time for him to perch the next level as a player. By the time he left Argentina again for his home, then Hogwarts, young lad had it down. It was all on the wrist, as he found out after many a wasted hour on the pitch. But now the exam keepers wouldn't stand even less a chance. Hell, if he really wanted, Adrian could be directly to the side of the hoops, curve it, and still score. To hell with physics. Before, and with all vanity aside, Adrian knew that he was one of the better chasers in Hogwarts. Now it seemed his dreams of being a pro could be something more, if he chose such a path. Now his 7th year was a culmination in every sense. The idea of playing the part of the perfect person had begun to wear on his sanity, and Adrian is coming to terms with the fact. Soon he will no longer be able to keep up the charade of happiness, and everything about him will be thrown into question. His greatest memory was meeting the legendary Sophia Loren, friend of his father's. It was his 10th birthday party, and she was one of the many famous faces that had made an appearance. To this day, Adrian can remember what her gift was, other than the honesty in her rapturous eyes, when she told him that one day he'd grow to be more of a lady killer than his dad, followed by a lingering kiss on his cheek. That was the first day he had truly felt like the one everyone was after. His worst memory, the Gallant Cons, sang his one-time beloved. He'll never attend again, and it pains him to think about it, to this very day. In Adrian's mind, that day marks the beginning of his disillusionment with himself, seeing himself as a fake. Let's move on to the player, who created such a ravishing character. Their name or alias is Crow. They've been role-playing for 8 years now, have no other characters on the site, and found the site because of caution. And here is the role-playing sample. Adrian looked pleadingly at that French cigarette in his hand, felt betrayed, seduced, had been so long, well over a year, not a single one. They would do nothing for him but yellow his teeth and stretch his skin. But oh, the rush! The beautiful and fleeting moments of a small island of peace in a sea of chaos. Even as Adrian glanced down again, he found his hands already lighting the bogey he was trying to convince himself he didn't need. But oh, how he did need it. What a horrible holiday it had been. He had gone home to accompany his parents to his mother's ancestral home in France. He had looked forward to reuniting with the French brethren of his youth in flowing French wines. He was not disappointed in that regard. The subtly alcoholic family of his and beautiful food brought out the Frenchman in him, and for the first few days Adrian spent his time walking the streets of Cannes, picking up the guitar again, and practicing his French with the multitudes of French girls on breaks as well. But on that last night there, his world was shattered. He was attending the annual gala thrown by the Film Academy. He had mingled smoothly with the genuine Princess of Monaco, and charmed the designers from Armani, for making his way towards the bar for something stronger than the champagne from Bordeaux. How he hated champagne from the north. But upon reaching the table, he saw a pregnant woman in a beautiful gown, and when the eyes met his, Adrian's heart was severed in two. He was looking into the eyes of the one girl he had ever loved, he had ever truly and deeply cared for, Ariel. Of course she was here. She was an inspiring actress and model, a homegrown talent. But Adrian had tried hard, so hard to drive her from his mind after their falling out. He hadn't considered it. She spoke something to him, showed an accepting, reconciling smile, but neither his sight nor hearing were available, for his eyes had pieced together the bumped belly in the face of his dreams. All he heard was a fierce pounding in not just his ears, but in his very being. He tried to speak, to think even, but for the first time in his life, Adrian was left completely and utterly speechless. Apparently he left soon after. It must have consumed quite a bit, because he woke to find himself sprawled half-naked in the snow on the beaches of Cannes, a bottle of his father's favorite tequila clutched desperately in his hand. Now here he was, sitting on the banks of the lake, a slave of the cigarette on his lips. He tried to focus on his surroundings, but he felt himself shaking violently, with silent tears on his face. His mind was still in the gala, shocked and despaired. As he threw the now mostly filter onto the frozen surface of the lake, he withdrew another from his pocket and lit it. He was glad he had brought the pack. And so we reach the conclusion of this segment of Dramatic Reading with Jamey. I have thoroughly enjoyed sharing this lovely piece of literature with you, and I hope to see you again in our next installment. Good day.